Welcome back to the CompTIA PenTest Plus training series, and we are officially at section 5.3, data exfiltration and staging, and this is all a part of the post-exploitation module, which is module number 5. And up until this point, we have covered 4.5, I guess, or 4.5 type of sections here. So we have the first section, which was on the rules of engagement, second section, which was on reconnaissance and enumeration, third section, or third module, I should say. So first module was the rules of engagement, second module was the reconnaissance enumeration, third module was all of the vulnerability scanning techniques, and fourth module, which was our biggest module, was all about attacks and exploits. And this is now assuming, in module 5, we're assuming that you've had a successful exploit and you've hacked into at least one target machine inside of the network. So now you want to do post-exploitation techniques, which is lateral movement and taking actions on your objectives. So for example, data exfiltration, that could be one of the actions that you have, one of the objectives that you have is to steal data, to exfiltrate data. So this is what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Now, this, just to kind of go over the overview paragraph here, once you've gained access to a system or an attacker, once you've gained access to a system, you have to exfiltrate stolen data without triggering security alerts, if that's actually your specific intention. Now, this happens to be one of the more popular intentions, which is to steal data, right? To exfiltrate the data that can be used maliciously. You can release the data to the public to hurt the reputation of a company, or you can steal customer data to try to, sell the customer data. You can steal intellectual property to try to sell them to the competitor of your target. There are a lot of different things that you can do with stolen data. So data exfiltration techniques involve covert channels, file obfuscation, and the abuse of cloud or network resources to transfer sensitive information outside of the target environment. So covert channels, so that they can't see that there's actually a connection being made externally. File obfuscation, which is when you kind of disguise the file or disguise the data that you're sending so they don't know what you're sending. And then the abuse of cloud or network resources. And it could be something like Google Drive. Like that could be something that's considered a cloud or a network resource that you've transferred the data to, and then you steal the data, or you kind of transfer the data out of Google Drive to your own computer or to your own server. And then you would do this to transfer sensitive information outside of the target environment. That's basically it. So the sections that we're going to be covering over here are the covert channels, Steganography, ICMP, and DNS Tunneling. We're going to talk about alternate data streams and fileless data storage, and cross-account resource abuse for exfiltration. So very fancy types of terminology here, and hopefully we'll be able to simplify some of this stuff so that you can wrap your mind around it and really understand what all of this is all about. So a quick little note from Hackaholics Anonymous, and let's jump into it. To get the PenTest Plus notes, practice questions, and to join a supportive community of like-minded people like you, consider joining the Hackaholics Anonymous membership community. We have 4 tiers: the supporter, the agent, the guardian, and the master. And each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The agent, guardian, and master levels will get exclusive content like line-by-line code explanations for how to create cybersecurity and PenTest Plus scripts, like exclusive downloads that they will get. For example, the notes document for this PenTest Plus and everything that I'm using for the lectures, as well as all of the practice questions and everything else that will go along that will be made for the scripts and everything else that we're going to be doing for the PenTest Plus training series. There will be free pre-made monthly Python automations that have to do with system administration, cybersecurity defense, as well as, of course, PenTest Plus and ethical hacking. And then there's going to be monthly live streams with me every single month, plus so many other things that you would get as a part of being a member of Hackaholics Anonymous in these tiers. To join, you can simply click the link in the description below, or you can go to our homepage and click the join button there, or you can go to youtube.com/@HankHacksHackers/join, and you'll be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous. Now, without further ado, let us continue with PenTest Plus. All right, what are covert channels? So let's talk about these real quick. Covert channels allow attackers, you and me, to transfer data in a way that avoids detection by security tools. So standard security solutions like firewalls, IDS, and IPS, they often ignore covert channels. So useful in high security environments where direct file transfers are actually blocked. And common channel techniques could be steganography, which hides data inside of images, inside of audio or video files. ICMP tunneling, which encodes data inside of ping packets. And DNS tunneling, which uses DNS queries to exfiltrate data. So let's talk about all of these things. First up is steganographies, and this is the hiding of data inside of images or audio files, or really any other kind of file. You're not putting it in the actual contents of the file, right? But you are hiding it within the macros and the bits of the file. So it conceals data inside media files to bypass security scans. Attackers use tools like steghide, outguess, and zsteg to embed and extract hidden payloads. Embedding a file inside of an image can be done using steghide, and it would be something like this, right? So we would do steghide, embed, and then the file itself is going to be the image, right? The data is going to be what's inside of this secret data text file, and then you just give it a password so that people can't view it without having access to that password. So it'll hide the secret data text file inside of the image with a password associated with it so that people cannot simply access it by just opening up the image. And you would use steghide to take the data out of it, because again, it's just an image, right? So just double clicking the image wouldn't automatically give somebody access to the secret data. You would have to use steghide to unhide, to actually extract the data out of this specific image file. And then in order to do it, you would be prompted with a password. To extract the data from steganographic file would be, again, steghide, and then now you're using the extract option. You would give it the image itself and then the password to be able to extract the data, and it reveals the hidden data from the image. So you use steghide to actually embed data, secret data, into the image, and then you would use steghide to extract the data as well. Now, the mitigations against these types of exfiltration, steganography-based exfiltration, is to use file integrity monitoring to detect modified images. And there are rules, for example, inside of a Windows environment, event rules or event codes that you can use to track to see if there's any files that has been modified, any images that have been modified. You can analyze file metadata for unusual embedded data. That's always really key. And you can inspect file sizes for abnormal increases in the size of the file. And hash values will also change if the file itself has been changed. So if an original image has a certain hash value and then we embed data into that image, then the hash value of that image will also change, which is part of the file metadata technically, or the integrity of the file. So you can actually go ahead and verify the hash value, the original hash, as well as the new hash of that image to determine whether or not the image has actually changed. And from there, you can kind of do the rest of your reverse engineering or your investigation to try to find out exactly what the changes were. And looking at file metadata for unusual embedded data would be the next piece. ICMP tunneling is our next one, which uses ping protocols to exfiltrate data. And the tunnel embeds stolen data inside of an echo or a ping request. And so since IPMP is often allowed through firewalls, it provides an easy exfiltration path. Now, exfiltration being the key word here, because there are a lot of firewalls that they'll prevent pings from coming in. So if you are pinging the target, the firewall may actually block your pings, right? But if you're sending the ping out of the target to a different destination, it may actually allow that to take place. So sending data over ICMP using something like ICMP-SH can be done as simply as doing ICMP-SH and then giving the attacker's IP address, which is the IP that you have for your attack box, and then you have the destination IP address, which is the target's IP address, and then from there you have that connection that you can transfer files over ICMP pings from the target to the attacker, or vice versa, really. Now, detecting this is fairly simple to monitor for large or frequent ICMP packets from any given IP address to the victim IP address or your machine's IP address, or vice versa. Blocking outgoing ICMP requests unless explicitly needed. So again, right, the incoming stuff, the incoming ping requests is typically what's blocked through the firewall, but outgoing ping requests from the target is usually not blocked. So you would want to block all of those things and then have a explicit series of IP address that you can send pings out to. And then deep packet inspection, also known as DPI, can be used to detect encoded data in pings. And one of the greatest tools that are available for this, if you want to do manual inspection at least, is Wireshark. And you can do deep packet inspection using Wireshark, which is an open source tool. It's just that you need to know what you're looking for, because it won't give you hints and things like that, right? You will have to determine what is actually inside of a packet and kind of make that analysis on your own. However, it is a tool that will allow you to do deep packet inspection, granular inspection on a packet level, and then you will go ahead, hopefully, if you know what you're doing or what you're looking for, you'll be able to find it. There are a lot of videos on Wireshark on this channel already, so if you want to learn how to use Wireshark to do packet inspection, I would encourage you to go ahead and check out those videos. All right, let's move along here. The next one is DNS tunneling, which would be exfiltrating data via DNS queries. So DNS tunneling hides stolen data inside of DNS request packets to bypass firewalls. Extracting DNS via DNS using iodine would be something like this, where you would use iodine, call on iodine, give it the IP address, and then the attacker's domain name, right? Your actual domain name, which encodes the stolen data inside of the DNS lookups to the attacker's controlled server, which is sitting in this particular location. And all of these tools, by the way, there are a lot of different help manuals that are available in the command line for the tool itself. There is a lot of documentation online available to do these things. I'm just trying to share the tool itself so that you understand what it does and what it's connected to. So iodined, right, is what you would see, for example, in a potential question, and then from there you would get the rest of it, and you'd be like, okay, well, if I see iodined, then I can assume that they're doing DNS exfiltration, right? So detecting DNS tunneling using the various tools here, we have monitoring of the DNS traffic for unusually long subdomains, which is one of the hints that it's never going to be something like this, where it's like a short domain name. The long subdomains is typically what implies that there's some kind of a attacker-controlled server that the data is being transferred to, or the connection is being established to, and then you can see, okay, well, they're probably trying to transfer data out. Another one would be to use anomaly detection to flag high-frequency DNS queries. So if you have the baseline for your network traffic, if you're looking for anomalies, that means that you're looking for anything outside of that normal traffic, that baseline traffic. So using anomaly detection to see which DNS queries are happening frequently. What is the high volume of the DNS queries that's happening? And that would be a big hint that, you know what, there might be something shady going on here, because this specific DNS, this long subdomain, is getting a lot of different connection queries that are being established to it. So I feel like there's something wrong here. Then we have restricting external DNS resolution to trusted sources. So the external DNS resolution, that option, that protocol that's available, you want to restrict this to trusted sources. Now, one of the better ways to do it is to block everything and then have a whitelist of your trusted sources, because it's a lot easier to do it that way, to do explicit deny or deny all, and then have a handful of trusted sources that can actually have external DNS resolution with your network or with any of the devices inside of your network. All right, let's look at some alternate data streams and fileless data storage, which is actually very interesting. So alternate data streams, also known as ADS on Windows, Windows NTFS for file transfer, file support, file system, I should say, supports alternate data streams, which allow hiding data inside legitimate files. And these are commonly used for stealthy data storage and execution, and you can hide a file inside an alternate data stream by just doing echo of the sensitive data and then putting it inside of a text file, and then taking that and making it a hidden text file. It's kind of weird to think about, but that's basically, it's as simple as that to be able to do it. You just have this extra portion, excuse me, you have that extra portion at the end of the text file itself that implies that you want to make sure it's a hidden text file, or you have a hidden text file. So it hides the sensitive data inside of that report text file right here, this sensitive data, right? So it hides this inside of this report. It just hides it, which is what you can see right here. And this is just one of the things that's available from the Windows file system that supports alternate data streams. So it's as simple as that, where you can actually just take the sensitive data, whatever it is, and then put it inside of any given text file. Just make sure that you have this last element attached to the command so that it hides that sensitive data inside of the text file. If you want to retrieve the data that you just hid, it's also a very simple command where you do more, and then the arrow is just facing this way now, and then you give it that full command over there again. So report.txt and then colon hidden.txt, and then that will take whatever was hidden inside of this text file and it'll just extract it. It'll extract the hidden content without actually modifying the report.txt file, which is again very, very handy. So this is actually something that comes from these alternate data streams. It's just that it happens to be that it's very, very simple and easy to do. So what you can do to mitigate against this is to use forensic tools like streams.exe to detect these alternate streams, and then disable NTFS alternate data streams in high security environments. So you just don't want this to even be an option that somebody can do, which is, again, super simple. It's like a very simple command that can be done, and it comes native to that file system. It's just you want to make sure that you disable them in high security environments or high security machines, high security computers, etc. The things that are holding really, really sensitive data or access to sensitive devices, you want to disable this altogether in those machines. And you want to monitor the file integrity to detect unauthorized changes. So this is another one of those things that if you just look at the hash value of a file, and if you notice that the hash value of report.txt has changed, that means something has happened to that file. Something along the way happened where that file was changed in some capacity. And if you open it and the data inside of the file is exactly the same, then the deduction can be, you can assume very safely that there's some kind of other modification that was done. Maybe they put some kind of hidden content inside of the file, because the file itself looks exactly fine. It looks like there was nothing done inside of the contents of it, but there's something hidden that was put inside of that file. Fileless data storage in the Windows registry. So attackers can store stolen data inside the Windows registry to evade detection. So if you don't know what a registry entry looks like, this is what that looks like, right? So this is a registry entry. This is for the CU, which is the current user. And then there's the HKLM, which is for the local machine. So, and essentially it's kind of like the path, right? So you have inside the current user, there's the software folder. Inside of that, there's the Microsoft folder. Inside of that, there's the Windows folder. And then there's the current version, and then run the current version. And then when you go to this full path inside of the Windows registry, there will be a series of options that will be available. And then you can configure the various options of those options. You can disable them, you can enable them, and a bunch of other things, right? So that's what the registry is. Now you can store data in these different portions. So for example, you do registry add, and then to this thing, you would add this element right here, which is basically like this full command, right? It's very similar to what we saw earlier. So it's a backdoor is what they've named it, which I would not do because it obviously implies something wrong. So you would name it something else. and then you would give it the regSZ, which I actually have to learn what this is, so we'll kind of look at this a little bit deeper. And then we have the actual command itself, which is the PowerShell invoke expression, new object web client download string from the website, and it's a attack script, the PowerShell script. So let's go look at what this tregz portion does, because the rest of it I am pretty solid with. I just want to make sure what the rest of it means. So let's go and check that out. Oh, it's actually kind of simple. So the /v backdoor is the name of the new registry value that we're setting. The -t reg_sz is the data type so -t would be the type of data that's being added, and it's a string. So regSZ is just a string. And then we have the actual string itself. So this is the data that will be assigned to the backdoor registry entry, and it's the command that will be executed. So PowerShell-C launches PowerShell in a hidden non-interactive mode. IEX is to invoke expression commandlet, and it takes a string and executes it. And then the command that's being executed is this whole piece right here, which is a web client download string, which is used to download the contents of a file from a specified URL. It downloads the PowerShell script named script1 from a remote server, and that's basically it. Extracting the data from the registry is a very normal command. So this is actually something that you can do with any registry, where you just do a query against the registry path. So in this particular case, that same path that we just added that backdoor item to, you can just give it that full path and just do query instead of add. And so it reveals all of the data that's inside of this registry. So the very, very simple command. Mitigations against this type of exfiltration would be to enable registry auditing to monitor suspicious modifications. You also don't want to give access to the registry to any old user. Their computer should have access to it to be able to run it, but the user themselves should not be able to run these types of commands to manually add items to the registry or to query the registry. Maybe they can query it, but they shouldn't be able to add items to the registry. Use endpoint detection tools to flag unauthorized registry edits. This is a really big red flag. So if you see registry edits taking place inside of an environment, that is something that needs to be looked at very quickly, because this is a very common and popular attack vector to modify the registry. It's very, very common. And so number one, you limit the access to add items to the registry to a handful of users. And then after that, if you see that there are registry edits taking place, that would be something that you would take a very close look at. And hopefully it wouldn't be very many registry edits taking place, so it wouldn't be too populated or too polluted of a report or a log. But it is something that it's one of the most common, which happens inside of a Windows environment, which is the edits that are made against the registry. So you want to detect and use endpoint detection and flags and rules and things like that to give you alerts, so that anytime this type of edit is taking place, you're immediately notified. And then you can have autoresponder type alerts that will also take place, that if you see something like this taking place and you're worried that it might be malicious because nobody's supposed to have access to do it, so whenever it does happen, you can have an auto response type of a rule where that connection immediately gets dropped for whoever's trying to do it, or that computer gets blocked out completely from the rest of the network, whatever it is. Our final tactic here is the cross-account resource abuse for exfiltration. That just sounds extremely complicated. So first one is to exploit cloud storage for exfiltration, and attackers can leverage cloud storage like AWS, Google Drive, Dropbox to exfiltrate data. And uploading stolen data to an AWS S3 bucket is as simple as calling on AWS, the command line tool, assuming that it's installed on the machine. S3 to imply that you want to transfer something to S3, or at least interact with the S3 system. And then you're going to copy this data file to this location. It's basically it. Very, very simple. It transfers the file to an attacker-controlled cloud storage bucket, and that's it. It's not complicated to do. And for the most part, it's not something that would be on like an alert list or anything like that, mainly because of the fact that AWS is a very legitimate service, it's a legitimate system, and a lot of times people do need to transfer data back and forth from AWS. Now, the thing in this environment that would be the red flag is that if people should not even be transferring data, Doesn't matter who it's to, it's Dropbox, AWS, Google, it doesn't matter. If the data transfer is not supposed to take place, that's an immediate red flag. And if it's something that at that point, it doesn't really even matter what the secret data text file is named. It doesn't matter what the IP address is named. If you notice that there's this kind of a string taking place, AWS S3CP, if you notice that this is taking place inside of the logs, that's an immediate red flag and you need to address it right away, because in your environment, data transfer should not be taking place, right? So detecting these types of exfiltration would be to monitor unusual cloud storage activity. If you actually do allow for cloud storage activity. If you don't allow cloud storage activity, any kind of cloud storage activity would be considered unusual. I don't know how many times I've said cloud storage activity, but that's like imprinted in my mind now. Next, we have restricting outbound access to unauthorized cloud services, which again is another one of those things that if you even do access to cloud services, then you want to restrict everything. So, for example, OneDrive is something that's available in a Microsoft environment, and most companies that have access to Microsoft licenses, they'll have everything that comes with that license, being, Outlook, Microsoft Teams, and OneDrive being just one of those things, right? And single sign-on is used for every single one of those elements, just so you can easily access those types of environments. So if you see outbound access to S3 and it's not to OneDrive, you should be concerned. If you see outbound access to Google Drive or Dropbox, you should be concerned, because the only type of outbound access should be to OneDrive, right? That's the only type of data transfer that's being done, because you can actually monitor everything that's being done with your Microsoft license with all of your users inside of OneDrive, and everything else should not be accessible. Now, using CloudTrail logging to detect data transfers. So CloudTrail is a specific tool that creates logs for you for any kind of data transfer that's being done. So you can also do that. If in addition to the Microsoft OneDrive thing, in addition to turning off data storage or data transfer if it's not even supposed to happen inside of your environment, in addition to all of that, you can actually have CloudTrail that would be assigned so that you can detect data transfers at large, any kind of data transfer that's taking place. And then from there, you can look through those logs to see if it's malicious or, something that somebody shouldn't be doing because they're trying to make their life easier and they're trying to work from home or something like that. And it's like, okay, well, you shouldn't be doing this. So all of this stuff can just be done they're simple. They're not really crazy rules here, but they're simple and powerful rules that can be done to detect cloud-based exfiltration and stop it in its tracks. Finally, we have exfiltrating data via cross-account AWS resource abuse. So this can be done from misconfigured AWS IAM rules to transfer stolen data between accounts. And this applies to any kind of cloud service provider. So it's not necessarily just AWS. It could be Google Cloud, it could be Microsoft Azure. When you're looking at identity and access management roles to transfer stolen data between accounts, this can apply to anything. Identity and access management is not just native or just belonging independent to AWS. So copying data between AWS accounts can be done via AWS S3 sync. So instead of CP where you copy, you would sync it and then you would give it the initial location and then the ending up location, and then source profile, which is the victim that's being used to actually access the victim's bucket and then transfer the stuff out, and then the destination profile, which is the attacker. So you give it the locations of the two different buckets, and then the source profile would be the victim bucket, which is this guy right here. And then the destination profile would be the attacker. Now, it doesn't say victim. It's probably going to say like John Jones. And then this one is going to say Sally Smith or something like that, right? So, but this is how you synchronize these two different things. This seems normal. This doesn't seem like anything that would be wrong, except if this particular person is a non-existent user, so they don't actually exist in your environment. This person does, this profile right here, they do exist in your environment, and their account was misconfigured. So their IAM, their identity access management role for this person was misconfigured, and they have access to a bucket as well, and their bucket just happens to store sensitive information. So this is a normal command, just like the copy command that we saw earlier. Those are normal commands. It's just that tracking down where the destination is and where it's going to and the users that are involved is where you can do your investigation and ultimately your analysis to see whether or not this was something that was legitimate or if it was malicious. So this moves files from a compromised AWS account to an attacker account. That's basically what it does. And with that, we are now in our practice questions for this section. So data exfiltration and staging. A couple of notes here. Number one, these questions are not the duplicate questions that you will find inside of the CompTIA examinations. We are forbidden from signing our NDAs, our non-disclosure agreements. Those things forbid us from actually sharing the questions directly on the exam. So what we can do is we can try to provide questions that would be similar to that and then help you think through the process, which is my main goal, which is number two, is I want to teach you how to approach these questions, teach you how to think about these questions, what the critical thinking process would be like, what process of elimination would be like, and all of those things so that you can find the answers yourself, and that way you'll be confident to take on any kind of question that's presented to you and not lose confidence or become worried or paranoid or anything like that. If you learn how to think through these things, then there's a very good chance that you'll pass the examination. Number three, I have not reviewed these questions. These are questions that I copy pasted into this slideshow. I didn't sit there and study them because I want to be able to come to these questions with as fresh of a mind so that you can also go through them with me and we can kind of go through these things together and try to find the answers to the questions together. And then finally, we have all types of questions. So we have multiple choice, multiple answer, meaning so multiple choice is one response, multiple answer would be two or more responses. There are scenario-based questions. And then when we get to the scripting and practical labs and everything like that, you will see all of the lab commands and everything that would be done so that you can also prepare for those types of questions as well. And there was one other thing that I kind of thought about. Oh, you know what? We're gonna, I guess this would be the final one. We're looking for the most obvious answer. If you have to convince yourself as to why an answer would be right, that's most likely not the answer. If you can find an answer that really pops out, it stands out to you, and it's the most obvious answer, that would be the one that I would choose every single time, because a lot of times they try to trick you with a bunch of different answers that may seem right, but you're looking for the most obvious answer, and then you'll see as we go through the questions. So question number one, which covert channel technique involves embedding secret data within an image or an audio file, right? So this is a channel technique, and the big piece right here is embedding secret data within an image or an audio file. So DNS tunneling is a legitimate technique that you can do, but that's not the answer here. Alternate data streams is also another legitimate technique that we talked about, but it's not the answer. ICMP is another legitimate technique we talked about, but it's not the answer. When it comes down to embedding data inside an image or an audio file, it's called Steganography. There we go. What is the primary advantage of using DNS tunneling for data exfiltration? It guarantees encryption of sensitive data in transit. Maybe. It requires no domain infrastructure. DNS traffic is rarely blocked or inspected by firewalls. It prevents detection through endpoint monitoring. So these all actually seem like legitimate answers. The one that stands out to me as the most likely would be that DNS traffic is rarely blocked or inspected by firewalls. That would be the one. It requires no domain infrastructure. That doesn't seem right. So I think that's incorrect altogether. It guarantees encryption of sensitive data in transit also doesn't seem right. The only things that really stand out would be C or D, and it may not prevent detection through endpoint monitoring because they would still be detecting it. It's just that it may not automatically be blocked. So I'm going to say C. Let's see if I'm right. Nice. Okay, great. Which of the following best describes alternate data streams, ADS, in Windows? A hidden kernel level rootkit mechanism? No. A feature of NTFS, so alternate data streams, belongs to the file system that allows hidden data storage in file attributes. That sounds pretty solid. A Linux-based steganographic storage techniques. This is not true. So alternate data streams is in Windows. It's in the question. We're talking about Windows here. So it's not a Linux-based steganographic storage. So that's definitely not it. A compression method to bypass antivirus scans, also not it. So this is a feature of the file system that allows hidden data storage to transfer files and file attributes. Which of the following is an example of cross-account resource abuse for exfiltration in cloud environments? Okay, so cross-account resource abuse has to do with cloud environments, right? SQL injection against the public API is not an example of this. SQL injection has to do with relational databases and putting malicious queries inside of some kind of a web form that will run something against the public API, right? That's not it. Exploiting container escape vulnerabilities is something that actually does exist in cloud environments, because containers, a container will have access to a certain type of software and its dependencies, and if you get out of that container, you are now inside of the overall cloud environment, and then you can go between containers and get access to different things. So this actually is something that is done inside of the cloud environment. I just don't think that's what it is. Copying stolen data into an attacker-controlled cloud storage bucket, that sounds like the answer. Using ICMP packets to transfer files is also not it. We're talking about cross-account resource in cloud environments. So the answer would be C. Excellent. Which protocol is most often abused for ICMP tunneling in data exfiltration scenarios? So ICMP is what? A ping, right? ICMP is pings. So port 53 is DNS. UDP port 53 is DNS. TCP port 80 is HTTP. ICMP echo request and reply, that would be the answer. SMB is for the server message block, and we're not using ICMP tunneling for that. So my answer would be C. Nice. Which techniques can be used to create covert channels for exfiltration? We need to choose two here. So techniques that can be used to create covert channels for exfiltration. So DNS tunneling, ICMP tunneling, SQL injection, credential spraying. Credential spraying is a brute force attack, has nothing to do with this. SQL injection is a relational database attack that would be with malicious SQL queries. So it's neither of these. So if we just did process of elimination, it's neither C nor D, so it would be A and B. But we've also talked about DNS tunneling and ICMP tunneling. So those would be to create covert channels for exfiltration. Which methods allow an attacker to stage or hide stolen data before exfiltration? Select 2. Storing data in alternate data streams? Yes. Encoding payloads inside benign-looking files, steganography? Yes. Launching ARP spoofing to redirect traffic? This is not it. So ARP spoofing is address resolution protocol, is when a MAC address is connected to an IP address. And so if you do ARP spoofing, you're changing the MAC address to be seem like a non-malicious MAC address, so that you'll actually be able to enter the network or direct traffic to that MAC address, IP address. Executing privilege escalation on the host is also not it, because we're talking about staging or hiding stolen data. So privilege escalation comes before this stage. We're talking about acting on our objectives right now, which is stealing data. So if that's the case, the only thing that really applies here is to store data in alternate data streams and to encode the payload inside benign-looking files, which would be steganography. Very good. Which cloud misuses could allow for stealthy data exfiltration? Select 2. So the misuse of a cloud data that would allow for stealthy data exfiltration. So running SQL injection on a SaaS database, again, nothing to do with this. Leveraging attacker-owned cloud buckets for staging data, sure. Exploiting overly permissive IAM policies to copy files across account, yes. Exploiting buffer overflow in a virtual machine. This has nothing to do with what we're talking about, which is exfiltration. Also, SQL injection has nothing to do with exfiltration. So the only answers that can be left are B and C, but attacker-owned cloud buckets is good for data exfiltration, stealthy, especially in a cloud misuse type of environment. And exploiting overly permissive IAM policies, identity access management, to copy files cross accounts is also something that is in a cloud environment. There we go. Scenario: a pen tester observes a steady stream of ICMP echo request packets leaving the target network. The packet payloads contain base64 encoded data chunks. What exfiltration method is most likely being used? So this is the ping tunneling, right? The ICMP tunneling, which is what we see right here. Steganography is when you modify images to store stealthy data. Alternate data streams is when you modify files in the file system to store data. And then DNS tunneling is on the domain name service. So this would not be something that's done on ICMP. So that would be B, ICMP. During a red team engagement, sensitive data was found hidden in the NTFS metadata of a harmless looking text file. The data was invisible during standard file browsing, but detectable with forensic analysis. This is the alternate data stream. This is the ADS that we were talking about in the last slide. So which technique was used? That would be alternate data streams right here. Steganography has to do with images, media files, things like that. ICMP tunneling is for the ping. Metadata service abuse. Ooh, that's like a really good trick answer right there. So metadata service abuse is kind of a really tricky answer because it actually has metadata of the harmless looking text file. But NTFS is the big key right here, which has to do with the alternate data stream. So my answer would be B. Very good. You are assessing a cloud provider's security. The attacker creates a cross-account IAM role that allows them to upload files into another customer's cloud storage bucket and retrieve them later without detection. So the attacker creates a cross-account IAM role and that allows them to upload files into another customer's cloud storage bucket and then retrieve those files later without detection. This represents which concept? Steganography? No, because that's again media files. Cross-account resource abuse sounds pretty solid. ICMP tunneling has to do with ping packets and echo request and reply packets. And then reverse shell persistence, nothing to do with this. So cross-account resource abuse, excellent. A tester encodes a confidential document inside an innocuous-looking JPEG image. This is known as obfuscation, right? The document is later extracted by the attacker using a custom script without triggering data loss prevention alerts. Which covert channel method was applied? Steganography. Image. It's an innocuous looking JPEG image. That's the immediate answer that stands out. Alternate data streams would be for NTFS, for the file system. And so this has to do with files, individual like text files. DNS tunneling is domain name service tunneling. ICMP tunneling is ping tunneling. So this is not any of that. None of that is implied here. The biggest hint is the innocuous looking JPEG image, which would have to do with steganography. Excellent. And that's it. Just like that, we are officially at the end of all of the key pieces of information. The next chapter is going to be cleanup and restoration, which is basically kind of, when you're done inside of an environment, when you're done with a pen test, make sure that you clean up all of your scripts and make sure you restore all the systems. I mean, that's pretty much it. Like, I don't even need to go into that, but we're definitely going to go into that because you want to be aware of it and you want to know what different tactics and strategies and checklists there are to do proper cleanup and restoration. But after that, we're done. After that, we're going to be going into the practical labs and the scripting and the exploits with Metasploit and all of that good stuff. So I'm super, super excited about that. And I cannot wait to get there. So for next week's episode, it's going to be the cleanup and restoration. Depending on how I feel, I might just drop this episode with the 5.4 episode together so that we can just get into the practical exercises sooner. But we'll just see how I feel about that. Depending on what my recording schedule is going to be like, we'll see how it goes. But for now, we are officially done with 5.3. We're going to do 5.4 next, and we'll be there. So if you have any questions or comments about what we talked about today, please drop them in the comment section below. If you would like access to these practice questions and the notes document and all of the script files that we're going to create in the practical labs, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous and you will get a quick little message about that here in a couple of seconds. And of course, make sure that you like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video comes out on this channel, including everything for CompTIA PenTest Plus. If no one else loves you, Hank loves you. Love, peace, and chicken grease. And I will see you in next week's episode later. To get the PenTest Plus notes, practice questions, and to join a supportive community of like-minded people like you, consider joining the Hackaholics Anonymous membership community. We have 4 tiers: the supporter, the agent, the guardian, and the master. And each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The agent, guardian, and master levels will get exclusive content like line-by-line code explanations for how to create cybersecurity and PenTest Plus scripts, like exclusive downloads that they will get. For example, the notes document for this PenTest Plus and everything that I'm using for the lectures, as well as all of the practice questions and everything else that will go along that will be made for the scripts and everything else that we're going to be doing for the PenTest Plus training series. There will be free pre-made monthly Python automations that have to do with system administration, cybersecurity defense, as well as, of course, PenTest Plus and ethical hacking. And then there's going to be monthly live streams with me every single month, plus so many other things that you would get as a part of being a member of Hackaholics Anonymous in these tiers. To join, you can simply click the link in the description below, or you can go to our homepage and click the join button there, or you can go to youtube.com/@HankHacksHackers/join, and you'll be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous.